This is the Louie T Network.
Draft Zone. Draft Zone.
Welcome, you are in the
Draft
lab room. I
Zone.
am your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on this program, 2014 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, with the Who's Next format attached. And it's been really fun thus far. People jockeying for position, trying to be the first to leave their comment at the bottom of the comment section of this very video, and all of those to follow, simply stating next in the team that you want to see next. So it's a pretty simple process. Be the first, that's the first component, to leave a comment at the bottom in the comment section underneath the video with the simple phrase next and the team you want to see next. Now, I don't care how you phrase it up, I don't care how you word it, as long as the phrase next and the team that you want to see is also located somewhere in that comment and you're first, that team is going to be next up on the docket here on the 2014 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series. So how we grade these players out, you ask? Let's go through that as well. We used the baseball grading scale here in the lab room during the Draft Wrap-Up Series. And it's a single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series, as we can never tell how these players will fare in the National Football League. And so what I have done over the last couple of weeks is I've revamped the scoring system and kind of altered it so that it reflects teams who are consistent throughout the draft. And so there are bonuses given out now for teams who have 2 or more. So actually it's 3 or more of a score. So if you have 3 home runs, you get a home run bonus. If you have 4 doubles, you get a home or a double bonus. You get 3 triples, you get a triples bonus, so forth and so forth. So you are rewarded for being consistent in the draft. And so that's how it's tallied. You get all of the scores, and we look at every single player in the draft for every single team in the National Football League. And so we split it up, break down the teams, look at their entire draft, grade out these players, get an aggregate score, and that is how we come up with the scores here in the 2014 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series. So we're talking about the Buffalo Bills, and no one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. And so it's a little tumultuous time in Buffalo right now. They have just hired some evaluators to come in and try to sell the team, and they might move the team. We really don't know what's going on in Buffalo right now, and you knew this was going to happen once Ralph Wilson passed away. He was the guy that was holding that thing together, and he didn't want this team to leave Buffalo, and now that he's gone, I don't know if anyone's going to be able to keep this team in Buffalo. It'd be a shame if they were gone in a matter of 2.5, 3 years from now, but that's nor here nor there. Let's talk about the Buffalo Bills, who had a pretty impressive draft in 2014. So let's get to the big board. You know I've got my handy dandy pointer. I've got the big board. I've got all the components I need. Let's talk about this draft for the Buffalo Bills. So you look at the Bills' 7 picks in this draft, and that's the kind of draft that I like. All right, I like the drafts that are compact You get straight to the point. You get the players that you want, and you get out. There's no need to have 7 extra 7th and 6th round picks. Again, a lot of times those guys don't make your roster. And I'm not saying, look, to each his own. I'm not saying don't go out and draft 5 7th rounders and 2 6th rounders. If that's what you want to do, if that's how you want to try to fill out your roster and find some late round gems, knock yourself out. But I'm the guy that wants a 1st, a 2nd, a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th. I'll take a 6th and a 7th. And if you just give me what I got, and maybe I got to trade up to get a guy, maybe I got to trade back, whatever the case may be. But I don't need a whole bunch of extra 7th and 6th round picks. I'm not the guy that wants to move back, 6 spots in the 3rd round and pick up an additional 7th round pick. Unless, of course, it's a guy that I want that's there that I feel like I can move back and he'll be there and there's no rush. But I'm more along the lines of, hey, let me get my guy when I need to get my guy. I don't know what anybody else is thinking. And so this is a nice compact draft, 7 players. Straight to the point, you get your guy and you get out. Fine by me, that's the way I like it anyway. I like it like that. I like it like that. And so we start the 1st round. 4th overall selection, wide receiver out of Clemson, Sammy Watkins. This was a controversial pick for the Bills, not because of the player, because you know here that you're getting all-world talent. Because of what the Bills gave up to get this player. Remember, Bills came into this draft as the 9th overall selection. They trade up to 4 with Cleveland. And I don't know how close they were to trading up to 2. I don't know what the situation was there. I don't know if they ever thought about trying to go up to 3 with Jacksonville. But they struck the deal at 4 with Cleveland. And so, would I have done it? And I said this pre-draft. Okay, this isn't something that I listened to the evaluators say at the end. I said this pre-draft. No, I would not have pulled the trigger on this deal. Look, I know you want elite talent in Buffalo, and I get it. I mean, who's coming to Buffalo? I mean, really, who wants to come to Buffalo? I get it. I understand. If you want elite stuff, you got to get it via the draft. So your general manager pulling the trigger, he wants to win now, yada, yada, yada. I get it. I understand the dynamic and why the move was made. My problem with the deal is that you just gave up too much when you were already in a position. It's one thing, and again, I kind of explained this already, but I'll quickly go over it again. It's one thing if you're 1 or 2 pieces away from potentially winning a Super Bowl, like the Falcons were a few years ago when they went out and acquired Julio Jones, and you feel like, hey, if I can get this missing piece, this missing link, add him to the roster, I'll be that much closer to winning the Super Bowl. The Bills aren't there. The Bills haven't made the postseason since we were partying like it was 1999. And it's been that long, longest drought in the National Football League without a postseason appearance. And it's not like getting Sammy Watkins is going to put you over the top. Now, again, you could argue and play devil's advocate and say, hey, the reason why we haven't made the postseason is because we don't have enough of these guys. The guys that can take the top off the defense, the guys that can score from long distances, and every time they touch the football, something big has the potential to happen. Again, I understand your position. However, you could have gotten a guy with similar qualities, not the same type of football player, but similar qualities at 9. Maybe you would have had to reach for him a bit, but again, it's you getting your guy when you need to get your guy. Now, that wouldn't have been your guy, but it would have been a guy that could have done some of the things that you're going to ask Sammy Watkins to do, and you would have still had your 1st and your 4th round pick from next year. Now, the 4th round pick next year, that's not the one that I'm really worried about. Now, again, I value my picks, especially the first 5 rounds. I value my picks. It's not like it used to be where you could give away a 5th rounder, a 3rd rounder, and really not care. I want my first 5 rounds of picks. The 6th and the 7th ones are the ones that I kind of devalue a bit. But, again, look. These were the 2 packages, okay? And these are the 2 packages that everybody was talking about, and I have to agree with them. I said this pre-draft that I didn't think you should make this move, and I'm saying it now, but these were the 2 packages. You could have done what you did, package up your 1st and 4th next year, move up to get Samuel, and that's what you did. That's package 1. Package 2 would have been stay at 9 and take Odell Beckham Jr., ODB, who I think is one of the most explosive, most polished route runners, best hands, all of that combination in this draft. So he just doesn't have the size and the physicality of a Sammy Watkins, but he brings some other things to the table that Sammy Watkins doesn't. So, I mean, I thought that was the package that you should have went with. If you wanted a receiver and a game breaker and a game changer that bad, then that was the guy to go for. But, okay, it's done. Let's talk about the player you got it for. And Sammy Watkins, to me, was a can't-miss prospect, a no-doubter from day one. I've been watching Sammy Watkins, one of the few players in college football I had my eye on, other than Notre Dame players, over a course of years. I mean, I've watched Sammy Watkins grow as a football player at Clemson, and he's a joy to watch, man. He's a guy that is explosive. He's tough. He does all the dirty little things that most flashy, explosive receivers don't do. Does he go over the middle as much? Not really, no. But, I mean, does he have to? I don't know. I mean, that's for you to decide. You get him on your team and you figure out what you want to do. I preferably wouldn't like him to take a whole bunch of shots if not necessary. You know, get somebody else to do that. But, I mean, the thing about him is that he's just so explosive in everything he does. And I think that's the thing that had everybody salivating, everybody drooling. I know that's what caught my eye at a very early stage in his career was how explosive this guy was. I mean, it didn't matter if it was a bubble screen, if it was a jet sweep, if it was a reverse, if it was the 9 route, if it was a slant. I mean, everything looked the same. Explosive with bursts, and he snatched the ball out of the air when he caught it. And it just, everything just looked fluid. It looked right. It looked like this guy was going to be an elite prospect when he came out of college. And you put that in conjunction with the toughness, the ability to block down the field, the want to. And again, blocking in any facet of the game, whether it's an offensive lineman in the run game or a receiver blocking down the field, when you block, it's want to. It's about attitude. You got to want to block. You got to want to be a willing participant to have it go the way that it's supposed to. And he's a team guy, and he'll do everything that he needs to do to help his team win. And I think that also makes evaluators and scouts and coaches feel really good about this kid because he'll go out, he'll earhole a linebacker, he'll go out and take a cornerback and drive him 3 yards out of bounds. And those are the type of things that just make you say, this guy's a winner. This guy gets it. And the speed, the explosion, the ability to snatch the football out of the air, make it look easy. Sammy, to me, is one of these one-of-a-kind specimens that you get at the receiver position every so often. And that's why the Bills came up. And again, I get it. I just don't agree with the move, okay? But I know what your premise was here, and I knew what the thinking was here, and I understand because this guy is unlike any other receiver in this draft. And I think the fact that he brings so many different things to the table that this Bills team has lacked for a while now is why the Bills were so intrigued and felt like we got to have this guy on our roster. And so in the first round, 4th overall selection, wide receiver out of Clemson, Sammy Watkins. Look, I mean, I could sit here and dress it up and yell. You could put it on the board. Look, at the end of the day, this guy was a home run last year this time. If he came out of college last year, and look, he couldn't have come out last year because he wasn't eligible, but he was a home run last year. And so I'm telling you now, he's a home run. And so I'm going to just go ahead, write that down on the board because this guy is a home run. And not really much more to say about Sammy Watkins. You got yourself a heck of a football player. Would I have given up what it took to get him? Probably not. Now, look, you can go out, and this is the only way to validate what you have just done. Now, Sammy Watkins can end up being a Pro Bowler, an All-Pro, and potentially a Hall of Fame player. And nobody will be talking about this trade, okay? But the way to quiet down the detractors right now in the present time, because over time, he'll pay the dividends of this trade, okay? But right now, the reason why everybody's in such an uproar about the trade is because of what it means in the short term. Next year, if you want to quiet down people right now, go out and win 10 games and make the postseason and make that pick in the first round the 22nd or the 24th pick in next year's draft, not the 3rd or the 5th or the 7th or the 8th or the 9th. And that's why people are so outraged, because the Bills don't make the postseason. The Bills are annually a disappointing team. And so that pick is normally a top 10, top 5 type of pick. If that's the case, then you gave up too much. If that pick is at 22, if that pick is at 24, then that is a heck of a pick for you. That is a heck of a steal for you in terms of getting Sammy Watkins. So you want to make this trade go away in terms of people talking about it and the ramifications and the fallout? Go out and win 10 games next year. Simple for me. Really simple. So you move on to the second round. 44th overall selection, offensive tackle out of Alabama, Cyrus Kouandjio. And here was a guy that throughout the entire process, he was a first round pick for the most part. All right. And let's just take it back a year. Okay. Let's go back to 2012. All right. This guy was arguably the best tackle in all of college football. I mean, we were talking about this guy going top 5 for the majority of 2012. Then the 2013 season happens. Some injuries set in, and he's not the same guy. And all of a sudden, he gets to the combine. They have a medical eval. It doesn't look really good. It's kind of cloudy and murky for some teams. They don't really like what they see. They take him off the board. It is what it is. This guy ends up going, he slides to the second round. And look, I put on the tape, and the first thing I see is this mammoth man. And I see his movement skills and not really impressed, you know. And I've watched Cyrus Kouandjio. I mean, he plays at Alabama. How could you have not seen this guy? So, you know, I see him, and I call guys like him, I call them clunkers. He's a clunker. You know, his movement skills are junky. It's not flashy. It's really cluttered and messy, but it gets the job done. Somehow, all that sloppiness comes into one package, and it's able to be functional. It's a clunker. It works, though. And so you see him moving. You know, you really don't want this guy moving out of space. Speed beats him out in space. You know, he can't redirect his body. I mean, we're talking about a 6'7", 325-pound guy. I mean, he's a huge man. So it's hard to redirect that frame once you get it going at a high speed in one direction. Somebody flashes across your face, say you're out blocking a screen, and you get out and you start running, and here comes a safety coming down, and he's standing there, and then he darts out of the way. He can't get to that safety. All he can do is try to reach and push him, and normally he misses. He's a clunker, okay? But when I think of clunkers, I usually think, and Mike Mayock's favorite term for guys that I consider clunkers is heavy-legged waist benders. That's exactly what Cyrus Kouandjio is. But normally when you get these clunkers and heavy-legged waist benders, they get beat by speed. You know, speed is normally what gives them a problem in the passing game and in the run game. I was thoroughly impressed, and I was actually shocked that speed didn't beat this guy. And I went back and watched 2012 when he was more dominant, and he dominated DeMontre Moore in Texas A&M. And I came back to 2013 to see what the difference in the contrasting play was, and I was surprised both tapes that I watched that speed didn't beat him. Speed did not beat this guy. And he's got the most massive slap, boom, I've ever seen. I mean, he could have been on daps, pats, and smacks because he's got a serious slap. I mean, when guys want to run by him and it's a screen or it's a draw, and he knows that they're coming upfield and he's inviting them up the field, man, he's got a massive slap. I mean, that slap that he gives a guy to just push him by as he's going up the field. I mean, I saw him knock guys 2 and 3 yards up the field. It was so nasty. It was such a powerful paw. You know, that paw doom that I talk about, he had it on the offensive side, and that's rare. But the thing that I see with Cyrus Kouandjio that bothers me a bit is that he looks clumsy often. I mean, there's times where he reaches and he misses and he whiffs. And there's times where he just whiffs. And he goes out to run block. He tries to get to that second level. And he doesn't do anything. He didn't block anybody. He's pushing and he's missing. He overextends himself. Those are the times where I'm like, there's some work to be done here. But in the passing game, speed doesn't beat him. And I think the reason why is because of length. And I've talked about this in previous videos, that length wins in the National Football League. And Cyrus Kouandjio is blessed to have vines for arms, and guys find it tough to get around him on the outsides. Now, what I did see, though, is that he is susceptible to being beat across his face. Speed can beat him inside because sometimes he overextends himself outside. He opens up the hips, starts moving outside. And again, I just told you, once he starts going in one direction, hard for him to redirect to another. So if you go hard outside, back inside, you can beat him across his face. If you just start out the snap and explode to the inside, you can beat him across his face. And when he gets beat, he just holds. He didn't have a problem putting you in the most crucial sleeper you've ever seen in your life. I saw this guy put a couple of guys to sleep on the field. I mean, hog tied them, duct tape. I mean, maiming guys, and he didn't get a flag. I don't know how he didn't get a flag, but if you beat him across his face, he will hold you and bear hug you and put you down on the ground. And that's something that he needs to clean up. And out in space, I don't think he'll ever be the guy that I want him to be. But I tell you what, inside the 5-yard line, in the red zone, going into the end zone, there's not another offensive lineman I want on my football field, on my team, blocking for my quarterback or running back than Cyrus Kouandjio. He smells the end zone, and when he gets in those situations down by the goal line, the guy is all but impossible to get past, and he's like a huge mountain of a man, and he just engulfs guys down by the red zone, by the goal line. I mean, he's tremendous inside the 5, and so that's extra value there. I think he's a really good offensive tackle with a lot of potential. You just got to make sure you get rid of some of those tendencies and highlight his strengths. But he's going to protect E.J. Manuel. That's one thing I don't worry about. I think he'll protect your quarterback. The thing you got to worry about with him is in the run game, will he be sufficient enough when he's out in space? He's not as effective out in space. He's a clunker out in space. He misses, he whiffs. If you can keep this guy confined to a little phone booth area, I think the guy has everything you're looking for. You put him out in space, you ask him to be on the move, you'll be somewhat disappointed in what you find. But in the second round, 44th overall selection, offensive tackle out of Alabama for me. This is surprising to some, maybe to many, but because of how big he is and off of his talents alone, I think this is a triple. Because to me, he has everything you're looking for. He run blocks. Again, you don't want him down the field out in space necessarily, but at this line of scrimmage, he's a power run blocker. You want a guy that's going to protect your quarterback, he'll do that as well. And where you got him ups the value a bit. Makes this pick a home run. You can put it on the board. Yeah, it's a home run. And yeah, it's somewhat surprising because I could see how this guy in your eyes could be a triple or even a double. But because of this guy playing at Alabama against elite talent week in, week out and holding his own. And we were talking about this guy being the best. You don't just end up being the best one year and then the next year you just fall off the map. And he didn't have that drastic of a fall. I mean, he's in the second round. And we expected him to be a first-round pick. And I think the medical, not the play, not the production on the field, is what scared teams away. And so he's got holes in his game, but there are things that are correctable. And I'll tell you what, in a short, confined space, this guy is one of the best tackles in this draft. And he's big, he's massive. He's a clunker, but he gets the job done. It's not pretty, but he gets the job done anyway. So you move on to the third round, 73rd overall selection, linebacker out of Louisville, Preston Brown. Now, I watched 2012 tape and some 2013 tape of this guy. And I had to watch multiple tapes because I was trying to figure out what this guy was, what he was going to bring to the table in the National Football League for this Buffalo Bills team that I think is pretty stout up front in the front seven. I mean, They led the league in sacks last year. They can get after the quarterback. Now you need guys that can roam around the field, help you out in coverage, help you out in space, as well as help you get to the quarterback and stop the run. So enter Preston Brown, all right? And here's a guy that played at Louisville. There were some studs on that defense. And Marcus Smith ends up being a first-round pick to the Philadelphia Eagles off of that defense. And so they've got some guys that can play some football. So watching Preston Brown in 2012, he was big. And when I say he was big, he was a big boy. He was a fat boy, okay? I was trying to be modest. No, he was fat. He was a fat boy. I mean, but he moved well. He carried the weight well, but he was a fat boy. He needed to lose some weight. So watching him in 2012, I was like, wow, he's a big one, okay? But he was running around, flying around, hitting guys, getting to the football. But you could tell that weight was wearing him down, okay? It was slowing him down. He was a step slow, and I thought he was ineffective as a blitzer in the passing game. When he was going after the quarterback, the blitz, non-existent. I mean, he didn't get to the quarterback. He would run, he would blitz, and he would just be filling up a gap. Well, I don't need you to do that if you're going after the quarterback. I need you to actually get to the quarterback. In the run game, however, when he run blitzed, I felt like he was more effective. Now, this is in 2012. Now, he could drop into coverage, but you didn't want him, falling out too far out in coverage. You didn't want him getting lost out in space because, again, at his size, you didn't want him too far away from the line of scrimmage where he didn't have help one-on-one with a back or a shifty receiver. That's a problem waiting to happen. Okay, you're LFT at that point, looking for trouble. No, you don't want that. So you fast forward to 2013, and the guy drops about 12 pounds, and he looks fabulous. And he needed to drop that weight because, again, I thought he was a fat boy. And so I looked, and I was watching the tape, and I was like, man, this guy looks amazing. He lost some weight. He looks to be in much better shape. And it definitely helped him gain a step because you could tell from 2012 to 2013, he was definitely faster. And that allowed him to blitz the quarterback much better. He was much more effective at getting to the quarterback in 2013 than he was in 2014. And it was because he had lost that weight. It's because he was a step faster. And that helped him get to the football and the ball carriers faster. He drops into coverage an awful lot. And I don't think he's that great in coverage per se. I mean, I'd say 12 yards and into the line of scrimmage, I think he can be solid in coverage. But in man-to-man, I wouldn't trust him in man-to-man coverage, especially over the slot. Now, if he goes out into the slot over a tight end that splits out, I think you would feel fine with most tight ends in the league. Of course, if you put an athletic freak across from him, a Jimmy Graham, a Ebron, a Vernon Davis, one of those type of guys, and even a guy in your division, maybe a Gronkowski, he might find it hard to keep up with those guys. I think he could keep up with Gronk, though. I think Gronk's size is what would give him fits because this is a 6'1" linebacker. So, Gronk being a 6'6", 6'7" type of guy, a long tree guy, it'd be tough for him to stop Gronk from getting to a spot and extending his arms and catching the football. But he's fine out in space 12 yards away from the line of scrimmage and in. Once he starts dropping it into deeper zones, he's like a fish out of water. I wouldn't trust him per se there. Really don't want him in man-to-man coverage either, but he can hold his own again closer to the line of scrimmage. But where his value is up around the line of scrimmage, in the run game, blitzing off the edge. I like him blitzing on the outsides more than I do in the interior because, again, he seems to be a guy that's extremely sticky when he blitzes. Somebody gets their hands on him and he can't disengage and find a way. He doesn't blitz well to me. So I need him out on the edges, out in space, where he can try to get a running back one-on-one or a tight end and make those guys miss versus trying to make an offensive lineman miss and whiff. And so Preston Brown, for me, he flows to the football. When he gets there, he has violent intentions. I like that. He runs through ball carriers. Is he a playmaking linebacker? I don't really think he is. I don't really see him fitting that mold. I don't think he's a Kiko Alonso. He's not everywhere like Kiko Alonso, but I think he'll be a complement to that guy. If you're looking for Preston Brown to come in and start, I think he's an adequate starter in the National Football League. I think he can come in, do some things for you, especially in the run game where I thought the Bills struggled a season ago, stopping the run a little bit. So I think he'll definitely help you in that regard because he's tough, he tackles, he's physical. He'll do all of those things in the run game. If you're looking for this guy to get to the quarterback, which I don't think you should be looking for him to do. But if you are, you're barking up the wrong tree. But if you're looking for this guy to come in, run blitz, get into his run fits, he could diagnose some plays faster. But I like his motor. I think some people were knocking him for his motor. I think he flows to the ball well. He's everywhere where the action is. So I like Preston Brown. I think he's a solid pickup in the 3rd round. 73rd overall pick, linebacker out of Louisville. Preston Brown, for me, is a solid double. He lacks playmaking ability. He lacks the ability to get to the quarterback consistently when he's blitzing. But in the run blitz game, getting into his run fits, and even in some zone coverage instances, I think he's fabulous. And so he's going to run. And I think he's quicker than fast. And I don't think he's a sideline-to-sideline guy, but I think he can get to the sidelines if he needs to, but he needs somebody to slow the ball carrier down. He's not a guy that's going to take a pursuit angle and beat a receiver or a running back to a specific location. If someone slows that running back down and he takes a proper angle, he can get there and he can come with some force. And so Preston Brown, for me, is a solid double. He can come in, and I think he can start, and he'll have value for your football team in the run game. You look in the 4th round, 109th overall selection, cornerback out of Duke, Ross Cockrell. And this is a guy that I watched closely at the end of last year, especially in that bowl game between Texas A&M and Duke. I thought he held his own. I thought that game there, and I watched a couple of tapes of Ross Cockrell, but that game in particular was the one that I thought made this guy some money. I thought that game took him from a late round afterthought, a 7th or 6th round pick with a little bit of size that had some upside potentially that you could work with, to a guy that you could draft in the 3rd or 4th round and feel like, hey, we've got something here. Now, he went out in the East-West game and all of those other games, and I thought he performed well there as well. So his stock rose at the end of the year. It rose at the right time, okay? He started playing his best football at the right time. That last game against Texas A&M, against Mike Evans, I think somewhat put him on the map for evaluators and scouts that weren't really paying attention to this guy. That game put him on the map and served notice that, hey, I'm not just a guy that's here trying to find a way in the back door of the National Football League. I want to have a secure spot in someone's camp in the 3rd or the 4th round. And so that game, in conjunction with all of the off-season activities, the East-West, the North-South, all of those games, I think really helped elevate his stock. Now, let's talk about Ross Cockrell and what he brings to the table. Long corner. And you know this league is moving into these longer corners. He's a 6-foot corner with really long arms. He's a rangy guy. Not top-end speed. No top-end speed here to be found. However, he's not afraid. And you know how I am about corners not being afraid. He'll come up. He'll challenge you. Normally, he'll do that when he knows he has help. But I don't care. Look, I'm not one that's picky and choosy. I want you to come up and challenge guys. I want you to make everything hard. And in that game, sure, Mike Evans made some plays. He's Mike Evans. He's going to make plays. But what he did was he made it tough on Mike Evans. He said, everything you're getting in this game, you're going to work for it. And he got in Mike Evans' head a little bit. He was a little physical with him. Mike Evans picked up a couple of personal fouls early in that ball game, and he was being physical with him. And Mike didn't like it. And I don't think he was used, because when you see a 6'5" receiver, guys generally back off. They're scared. They don't want any part of him at the line of scrimmage. Ross Cockrell said, nah. I don't know what kind of party or what type of party you think this is, but I'm here to let you know I'm going to get in your face, man. And I don't know if you're used to that, but I'm telling you right now, I'm going to get in your face, man. What you going to do about it? And Mike Evans didn't like that. He didn't like being touched at the line of scrimmage, redirected, having a guy get in his face and jam him up at the line of scrimmage. He's used to free releases. And Ross got in his face, made it tough on him. And like I said, Evans made some plays in that game. All right. However, Ross Cockrell was there every step of the way. And it was just a matter sometimes of just locating the football. I mean, if he would have turned around and looked and located the football, he might have had an opportunity to make an interception or two. But he was one of the catalysts for that quick start in that game by Duke. Duke was up 21-0 in that game at one point. I mean, they were well on their way to a blowout before A&M hawked them down and ended up ultimately winning that game. But Ross Cockrell was a huge part of the start to that game because he was sticking to Mike Evans like glue. And he's one of these long corners. Now, here's my knock on Ross Cockrell. And for me, Cockrell is a non-willing participant in the run game. If he had his choice, he'd have nothing to do with the run game. Very frail body. We're talking 6 feet, but about $190. And he's one of those guys that you look at and you're like, man, where's the rest of him? Like, whew, he could stand. And look, I'm not asking him. I'm demanding that this guy put on 10 pounds of muscle. Okay, I'm not asking this guy to put on. I'm not saying, oh, he could use an extra, 8 pounds of frame. No, I'm demanding that this guy put on some weight. He's already not a blazer, so I don't expect him to lose a step with putting on weight, but he's got to be a more willing participant in the run game. I mean, guys block him, and he stays blocked. I mean, I saw one time with Mike, and of course we're talking Mike Evans, so this is an extreme case. You're talking about a 6'5", 230-pound guy. But Mike literally picked him up and slammed him on the ground and sat on top of him on one play. And Ross didn't do anything about it. I mean, he didn't want any part of anybody in the run game. And he really doesn't come up and support in the run. And so that's something I have an issue with. I like my corners to be physical and want. And again, I always talk about tackling being a want-to type of activity. Well, he doesn't want to tackle. And so that's something he'll have to clean up. But I think as a corner, he's long, he's active, he's around the football. I just need him to find the football. I need him to make plays on the football. But I like Ross Cockrell. I think he's got some upside. He's got potential. You get with the right coaching staff. You get with the right special teams coach. You get with the right defensive back coach. And this guy can help you in multiple areas on your football team. And so in the 4th round, 109th overall selection, cornerback out of Duke, Ross Cockrell for me is a solid double. He hit it in the gap. Again, because of the lack of top-end speed, the lack of wanting to tackle and being involved in the run game, I can't give him a triple. I can't give him anything other than a double because off the talent, the length, his ability to shadow receivers, especially ones of size. When you get shiftier, smaller receivers, that's when he kind of backs off a little bit, plays a little bit more timid because of the lack of top-end speed. But he'll come up and still challenge those guys too. And so I like Ross Cockrell. There's some work there to be done, but the potential there and the things that you have to work with, the tools, the size, the length, all that stuff, very intriguing for someone to get their hands on and see if they can make this guy into a upper echelon corner at the next level. So you move on to the 5th round, 153rd overall selection, offensive guard out of Baylor, Cyril Richardson. And this is a big mammoth man. And he played at Baylor in one of those explosive offenses, one of these gimmicky offenses that had a lot going on. But the reason why offenses like that are allowed to succeed is because of guys like Cyril Richardson who are absolutely stoning guys at the line of scrimmage, whether they're moving them out of the way in a run game or they're stoning them at the line of scrimmage and allowing their quarterbacks to have the time to survey the field and find the right guys to get the football to. And so Cyril Richardson in 2012, so he was one of these guys that was highly touted, All-American in 2012, and you had to come back to 2013 and figure out why he's all of a sudden a 5th-round pick. Because I remember last year, Cyril Richardson, because, watching Baylor, I get Robert Griffin III on my football team, so all of a sudden, by virtue of that, you become a de facto fan of Baylor. So all of a sudden, you start watching Baylor just a tad bit more, And so I don't know if that was some kind of subconscious thing or not, but whatever. So you see this massive guy, and he's moving people out of the way, and he's an All-American, and he's the best left guard in all of the college football ranks. And so you go from there to 2013 where this guy is somewhat of an afterthought, and you want to know why. So you go to 2012 and he's in shape. I mean, I think that's basically where the disconnect happens from 2012 to 2013. In 2012, he was in shape, and he was still a big guy, but he was in shape. He was able to move and get to that second level, and I thought he moved well. I still thought for his size in 2013, he moved well, but he was a step slower. And we know how this works. When you're a step slower, that allows and invites guys to come off the pace and knife into the backfield. That half a step that you're missing is the time it takes for that linebacker who's run blitzing to get into a fit, beat you to that gap, beat you to that hole, and get to the ball carrier. So it makes a difference. And the difference between 2012 Cyril Richardson and 2013 Cyril Richardson was the weight. And so I thought he was still effective. I thought he still stoned guys at the line of scrimmage. I thought he still was able to pull and get to that second level and make guys pay. But it was just a step slower. And that alarmed people. They didn't want his weight to be an issue. They didn't want his weight to get out of control. And so they had to reel him in. They threw out the rod. They had to reel him in. And he got the message loud and clear at his pro day. He dropped about 12 pounds, got down to about 330. And that's where he needs to be. If he can stay around 330. And I don't know if that's a long-term weight for him or not. He could show up at Bill's minicamp and be 345. That's not what you want. But that could happen. If they can find a way to keep this guy in tip-top shape, you got yourself a second-round pick in the 5th round is what you did. And I didn't see anything. His tape was clean, man. It was clean. One of the cleaner tapes that I've watched. Him and Chris Watt at the guard position right now, for me, have been the 2 cleanest tapes that I've watched thus far throughout this process when talking about guards. Just clean tape, man. I mean, not a lot here to pick apart other than the weight and him being a slight bit slower than he was in 2012. Sometimes in the run game, he overextends and will whiff on a block or two. But when this guy pulls and he engulfs, I mean, he opens up. He parts the Red Sea. When he goes into a hole and he pulls around, and there are two, I've seen him wipe out 2 defenders and be the key block on a 55-yard touchdown scamper for somebody. I mean, he's got the ability to block out the sun. I mean, he's a massive man. And when he gets his hands on somebody and he gets his paws and his body on somebody, forget about it. Forget about it. It's over with. It's done, son. And so I feel like you got tremendous value here in the 5th round, especially if this guy stays in shape. 5th round, 153rd, good feet. I think his base in the pass blocking game, excellent. Like I said, there wasn't one time that I saw this guy get blown up and walk back into the lap of the quarterback. Like I said, tape was clean, man. Squeaky clean. Squeaky clean. And so in the 5th round, 153rd pick, guard out of Baylor, Cyril Richardson. He's a triple for me. 3-bagger, man. I mean, I'm really feeling this dude. And I feel like with the player that you got, in the round that you got, supreme value is what that is. That's what I call that. A supreme value pick. You were in the store, you were shopping around, you saw an item that you really wanted, and you got a pleasant surprise when you picked it up and it had a pink tag on it. Meaning you got 25% off an item that you were willing to pay full price for in the first place. Excellent value, 5th round selection, Cyril Richardson, guard out of Baylor. Love the guy, love what he brings to the table. You instantly got better along your offensive line, and he's going to move some folks out of the way. He's one of these guys that can read. And I hear all the comments. I don't know the guy personally. So I hear people say he needs to care about football more. They question, does he love the game? I don't know the guy. I just know what I saw on tape. I know what the eyes saw. And I saw a guy that was engaged, that had a nasty enough. He didn't have an overly aggressive, nasty streak, but his size is nasty enough for me. And I saw him clear guys out. Great value. It's a triple for me in the 5th round. 7th round pick. Two picks in the 7th round for the Bills. So this is the first of 2. 221st overall selection, linebacker out of Florida Atlantic, Randall Johnson. And anytime you give me a prospect from Florida, that's a skill guy. First thing I think of is speed, athleticism. Because these guys out of Florida, they all do one thing well. They run. If it's nothing else a guy from Florida can do, it's run. And I don't know why that is. You can go ahead and come up with your preconceived notions of why that is. But I'm not going there with you. But these guys can all run. And he's no different. No exception to the rule. Randall Johnson can run. And for his size, 6'3", 240, that's impressive. We're talking about a 4'6", 40 guy. So he can move, man. He can pick him up and put him down. And what was impressive watching him on tape was the ability to be explosive. You know, explosive. So, you know, sometimes guys are fast. Like I talked about Larry Webster for the Detroit Lions defensive end, 4'5", 40 on a 6'6" frame. But I didn't see that on tape. I didn't see the explosion. I talked about safety Lonnie Ballantyne for the Texans, 6'3" guy, you know, 215, 220, you know, 4'3", 40 guy. I mean, that's blazing fast, but didn't see it on tape. That's not the issue with Randall Johnson, okay? I see the speed on tape. You know, when he diagnoses something and he takes off, this guy makes plays, man. I was impressed with some of the plays that he was able to make, and him shooting some gaps, getting in the backfield, being disruptive. Him getting around the edge when they asked him to blitz, and I felt like they should have asked him to blitz a little bit more at FAU. I thought they had this guy in coverage way too often, or had this guy off the ball or over the slot. And sometimes that's what happens to guys that are athletic. They say, "Oh, you're athletic, so we want you over the slot." And sometimes let a guy blitz a little bit, you know. I thought that this was what Oregon was guilty of with Deion Jordan a few years ago. Because he was such an athletic freak and so long, they said, "Hey, we're going to drop you in the coverage, man. What do you think about that? What do you think about dropping over the slot and covering slot receivers and dropping in the zone coverage?" What you do is you take away a guy's ability to learn how to be a very prominent pass rusher. When I don't do it as often, when I do it, I lack the ability to have different moves, to have an array and an assortment of moves, because I don't do it that often. So when I do it, I just do the same thing over and over again because that's all I know, because I don't practice it a lot, because you got me dropping in the coverage all the time. And that's Randall Johnson. When he does blitz, off the edge as an outside linebacker, because FAU plays a 3-4 defense. So he's the guy that's off the edges as an outside linebacker. He can get to the quarterback. I mean, I saw this guy dip the edge, beat the guy with pure speed around the corner, and he doesn't have another move because he didn't blitz enough. So all he knows is speed around the corner, dip the hips, dip the shoulder, beat the tackle around the end, get to the quarterback, and he does it well. And once he gets around the corner, he turns on his speed. You're not getting away. You're not getting away. And he knows how to find the football. And he's coming with the strip. And you know I like that. You know I like that. I like guys that they're not just satisfied with the sack, because anybody can get a sack, but the special ones, they go after the football. And he does that. But my problem is he just didn't get enough opportunities to go after the quarterback. They wanted him in coverage because he's a 4'6", 40 guy. Because he can, they will. And I thought that was unfair to Randall Johnson, because I think his stock could have been elevated if he was an 8.5, a 9.5, a 10 sack guy that could also run and double as a guy in coverage. Now you're talking about a different animal. Now you're talking about a guy that has a trait that many teams are hungry and starving and thirsty for in the National Football League. A guy that can get to the quarterback off the edges. Instead, you make this guy just another random linebacker from a school that doesn't get a lot of attention, and so he falls to the 7th round. I think this guy's got talent. I think this guy's got potential. If you get him in the right system, I think he needs to get stronger at the point of attack. There's too many times he gets caught up in the wash in the run game, and he's just blown up out of the play. And there's times where, you know, he gets to a gap and he gets blown out of that gap. And that's something he needs to work on. You know, heavier hands, stouter at the point of attack, finding the football. I was actually amazed at how well he found the football. So I won't say that's one of his, you know, deficiencies, because he seems to know where the ball is at all times. His problem is not being able to get there, because he gets stuck on a block and he can't get off of it. But when he's free to roam, and he could go sideline. He's a sideline linebacker. And when he's given the opportunity to go after the quarterback, I think he does that well. When you allow him to blitz, I think he does that well. I think when you ask him to go get a ball carrier on the ground, I think he does that exceptionally well. Okay? He's explosive. You see it in his game. You see it in his play, and he runs through ball carriers. His tackles are solid, and he'll blow a guy up if you give him the opportunity to. I like his explosiveness. I like his ability to roam sideline to sideline. I like the fact that you get extra value in the fact that he can drop into coverage. And I also like that he can potentially get to the quarterback if you give him the opportunity to. This isn't your average 7th round pick. I think he's a guy that was overlooked in the process because he went to Florida Atlantic. And I think his team set him up to be a 7th round pick because they didn't give him the opportunity to display all of his talents. But another thing is that he's oft injured. I know I watched some tape on this guy, and there were times where I'm like, why isn't this guy on the field? It's because he's dealing with a slew of nagging injuries. And so that's something that can kind of derail the talent that he has and kind of bring him to a screeching halt. Is can he stay healthy? I need him to stay healthy. If he can stay healthy and the Bills can figure out what kind of football player they've got on their hands and figure out the best way to harness all of the talents that Randall Johnson brings to the table, I think in the 7th round, you got yourself a nice, clean double. I think he's going shopping in the gap, and he's standing up with a double. He gets to second base, calls time, takes the batting gloves off, switches those out for the running gloves, and he's ready to rock and roll. This is a solid double here in the 7th round, and I like this guy. And I'm going to follow him. I hope he makes this roster. I hope he can play some special teams. I hope he makes this roster because I could see this guy starting at some point for you down the road if this guy can carve out a niche at the next level. If the Bills can figure out what this guy does well, because I think I know, but how does it fit in the grand scheme of what the Bills are doing defensively? If they can figure out how to get the most out of Randall Johnson, I think this guy has a legitimate shot to be productive on this football team. But he's got to make the roster. He's got to prove to be a guy that can help you on special teams. And I think he can. Just with the 4.6 speed alone, I think he's an asset on special teams. And they've got to figure out what to do with him. Because obviously, I don't think Florida Atlantic knew exactly what they had on their hands in Randall Johnson. So you move on to the other 7th round pick and the last pick in this draft for the Buffalo Bills, 237th overall, offensive tackle out of Miami, Chantrell Henderson. And Mike Mayock said, if you want to draw up a tackle in the National Football League, Chantrell Henderson is it. And you look at his frame, you're talking about a guy 6'6", 6'7", about 320. He's lean. I mean, he's not sloppy at all. And he could stand to be a little bit more muscular, but in terms of body being lean and fit and trim for 6'7", 320, he looks the part. I mean, I understand why Mike Mayock made the comment that he made. Because you look at him and you're like, yeah, that's what a tackle's supposed to look like. Absolutely. And he's got really good movement skills. Again, he's from Miami. Again, anytime you're in Florida, I don't really care what position you play. Guys can move. They can run. And he's another one of these freakishly athletic guys that can move for his size. But 7th round pick here, and here's why. And the first thing you run into is all the off-the-field issues. He's had a slew of them. Again, I don't know the guy. I'm not going to sit here and act as if I do. But obviously, he's had more than one transgression off the field, and it's brought his stock way down. I mean, his stock has plummeted from a guy that was thought of at one point to be a first-round pick and has that kind of ability at times to a 7th rounder. I mean, no one wants to deal with the repeated off-the-field problems. And so that's one issue. I'm not going to go into that because, again, I don't know the guy. I don't know his history. I don't know where he is mentally right now. I'm not going into all of that. Just know that that's there, it's present, and it's been a problem in the past. But let's talk about the guy on the field, and let's talk about Chantrell Henderson on the field. And to me, for a guy this athletic, and see, Cyrus Kouandjio and him, to me, they parallel, but they are opposites. Because I look at Cyrus Kouandjio, and he's a clunker. He's not the athletic freak that Chantrell Henderson is. Yet, Cyrus Kouandjio isn't beaten by speed, which amazes me. Yet, Chantrell Henderson has feet, can move, but he's beaten by speed. And he has a problem moving laterally. And so speed beats him Not every time, but most of the time. And I have a problem with that. Speed outside, speed inside. And he's one of these guys, you beat him, and he doesn't care. He'll be blatant with it. He will grab and hold you. He will tackle you. Watching tape on this guy, I swear he had at least 5 tackles. I was like, man, you're leading your team at the half with tackles with 5. I mean, damn. And I didn't see any flags. I'm like, wait a minute, what are we watching here? I mean, he literally took a guy, grabbed him here, and then grabbed him around the neck and fell on him. I'm like, where they do that at? Where is that legal at? Show me. Obviously, it was legal in the ACC, but that doesn't work in the National Football League. And so he's a grabber, he's a holder when you beat him, and he gets beat often. And he's got the ability, though, when he's locked in and he got the movement skills going on that particular night. I mean, he can be dominant, man. I mean, I watched some games where his kick-out blocks for the run game. I mean, he was the catalyst for some huge runs by their running back. And they got a running back, Johnson, out there that's a blazer. And you give that guy some daylight and he can go. And he was running behind Chantrell Henderson. And he was kicking out blocks, moving guys out of the way. 2 of your last 2 picks, your 7th round picks, I watched those 2 battle against each other. And Chantrell Henderson was winning that battle all night long. I mean, blowing up Randall Johnson, moving him out of the way, redirecting him. In the run game, I don't have any problems with Chantrell Henderson. In the pass game is where I struggle with this guy. It is where he struggles to me the most, because he can get out and run on a screen. He can get to the second level. No problems. His problem is when you ask him to get out of that stance, to backpedal, kick, and shuffle and move, and you ask him to stop a speed guy, a pure speed guy from beating him around the edge. That's when he struggles. That's when guys start running laps around him. And so I got a problem with that. You couple that with the off-the-field issues, and you look in the 7th round, 237th overall selection, offensive tackle out of Miami. Chantrell Henderson for me is a single, because you got the issues off the field. You got a guy that I don't feel like you can trust to protect your quarterback without getting penalties. And can he help you in the run game? Sure. I wouldn't mind if you wanted to have a massive, you know how the 49ers like to go jumbo, put those extra offensive linemen on the field when they want to go run heavy. When you know 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, you know they're running the football, and they don't care that you know they're running because they're just going to put a whole bunch of huge, massive bodies on the field. You want to do that? You want to stick him on the field for that? Knock yourself out. You want an insurance policy at the tackle position? Maybe he can be groomed into that, but as the starter, I don't like him. I don't like him at all. And so that's for you to decide. I'm just telling you, I'm not a huge fan, but maybe you clean up some of the deficiencies and you can get the most out of this guy. Hey, look, if you can squeeze this lemon and make some good lemonade, knock yourself out. But right now, I don't think the lemon is worth the squeezing. In the 7th round, offensive tackle, Chantrell Henderson out of the U. And so that's going to wrap up this draft. Again, 7 players. So let's go through this draft quickly. Home run for Sammy Watkins. Didn't like what you had to give up to get him, but you got him. He's here. Now make the best of this decision. He's an absolute jack. You go back-to-back home runs in the first 2 rounds in Quanjo and Watkins. I thought you got excellent value for a guy that's going to come in and anchor this offensive line. Preston Brown for me is a double. He's got movement skills. Can't go sideline to sideline. I don't think he's as effective as a blitzer when going after the quarterback, although he can be because he has gained a step by losing that weight. But I think he's more physical in the run game than he is going to affect the passing game. He's a double. Ross Cockrell for me has the size, has some length, does not tackle, is not a willing participant in the running game, and isn't going to help you in run support. 10 reps of 2 1/4 lets you know that this is a frail body boy here. He's got to get in the weight room. He's got to put on some weight. He's a double for me. 5th round, Cyril Richardson, guard out of Baylor. I love the tape. I love what he brings to the table. He's tough. He's huge. He moves guys out of the way. Great value here in the 5th round. A 2nd round type of talent in the 5th round. He's a triple. 7th round, Randall Johnson. I think there's something here. I don't think this cupboard is bare at all. I think there's something here. And if the Bills can find it, I don't know where it is. I don't know exactly what it is in your defensive scheme. But if Jim Schwartz, the linebacking coach, can figure out what this guy brings to the table, I think there's something here. And I'm telling you, I feel it. There's something here. I like this guy. It's a double for Randall Johnson in the 7th round. You can't teach 6'3". You can't teach 4'6", 40 on that type of frame. Figure out what he does well and let this guy help you somehow. And in the 7th round out the draft, 2nd, 7th round pick, Chantrell Henderson out of Miami. Offensive tackle is a single for me. Off the field issues. He struggles with speed rushers. I don't really get a good vibe from this guy. If you can clean up some of his deficiencies, maybe you got something in the 7th round. I'm just not a fan. And so let's tally up the points. Home run in the first 2 rounds. That's 8. Double, that's 10. Another double, that's 12. A triple, 15. Another double, that is 17. And you round it out with a single, that is 18. You get a double bonus for having 3 doubles in the draft. That gets you to 20. You divide 20 by 8. You get a solid double. A solid double. Yeah, nothing to write home about. Nothing eye-popping or mind-boggling. But it's a solid draft for the Buffalo Bills. And again, if you can put together solid drafts. Look, you got 1 single. And it happened to be your very last pick. So from pick 6 to 1, it's solid production up and down this draft to me. And so if you can continue to put together drafts like this one, tell you what, you'll feel like you've got a shot to stop being the worst team in your own division. I mean, aren't you sick and tired of being 6-10 every year? 7-9, 5-11. It's a repeating cycle for this Bills team. Drafts like these will help you if you develop these players. And E.J. Manuel, of course, is a big piece of that puzzle. But if you can develop these players, you'll find yourself starting to become relevant in the AFC East. So, it's a double for the Buffalo Bills in the draft wrap-up series. You know how this goes. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the Lab Room. I thank you for joining me on this program. All that's left to ask now is, who's next?
Draft Zone.
Like the content? Want more? Sub up.